So 2020 started off with a lot of great training. Going into the year, I had set kind of my New Year's goals as I normally do, and one of them, kind of subheading strength, was focused on shoulders and chest. Now, my back had always been kind of my strongest body part, but I really wanted to hit some big numbers on like a seated overhead press and incline bench. And for each of them, I wanted to hit 225 on that overhead press and then 315 on incline bench. And, I was quite a bit of ways away, but I was progressing very nicely towards each of them. And basically what I was doing with my training was I was focused on a single compound movement each workout. And then I would follow that up with some very targeted volume work. And basically that volume work was specifically chosen to support whatever the compound movement that preceded it was. And, progress was going very well. I actually released this under Evo Power. So it was basically just like a free update to my evolution program that I just sent out to everyone that had picked it up, and people, seemed to really enjoy it as well. For me, I absolutely loved it, and it was working well. I was stronger than I had ever been, kind of prior to that point. And things were trucking along in terms of nutrition. It was pretty much, business as usual, kind of vertical style somewhat. So a lot of beef, like ground sirloin and bison as well, and white rice. That was kind of like the core of my diet. And I was looking pretty good as well. I was happy with the way that my body was looking, even though I was in a surplus. Things were going very well. I felt like I had a lot of momentum. But kind of mid-March, for a weekend, I went down to Miami for a bachelor party, and that's when all the gyms shut down. And so actually that weekend, I did not go home to Chicago. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to spend at least a decent chunk of lockdown in Arizona. Gyms are closed everywhere. So regardless, I'm not going to have access to training equipment. Now, the issue, as I'm sure you know, is it was very difficult at this time to find any kind of strength training equipment, whether it's a barbell or dumbbells or whatever. Everything, immediately was kind of sold out. And so what I ended up doing was I went to Ace Hardware, and I kind of just decided to make my own makeshift gym. I got a nylon packing strap with like heavy metal clips on each end, kind of short piece of rope with PVC to create my own kind of homemade TRX, my own suspension trainer. And that was kind of the core of my gym. And then I got 2 5-gallon buckets that I was going to use for weight. And so basically I would fill it with sand or water. I wasn't really sure at the time. And then I got a metal pipe with caps on the end. And then I could basically thread the handles of each of the loaded buckets onto that. And I could do overhead press and curls and some other pressing movements. That was my Ace Hardware run. And it was probably less than $40 or so. And then online, I was able to go on Amazon and get like a dipping belt, like a weight belt with a chain, pretty cheap one for like $15. And that was my gym. And for a few months, that's really all I had. It was okay. Like, obviously it's not ideal, but I was making the best of, what I had available at the time. With that, basically, I was kind of doing a similar training style as to what I was doing previously. So I'd focus on one compound movement each workout. For chest, it was a weighted dip with the TRX and then the dipping belt and 5-gallon bucket full of bricks because they had bricks on the property. And that's what I ended up using for weight, kind of get some semblance of progressive overload. Obviously, you're limited by the number of bricks that the bucket can handle. And unfortunately, I quickly kind of ran into that limit. But that was chest. For back, it was pretty much the same thing, but weighted pull-ups. For shoulders, I was doing different kind of overhead press with the metal pipe, different variations there. Curls for biceps, and then for legs, I was doing all kinds of kind of creative things, whether it be like weighted pistol squats or split squats with the buckets, a lot of lunges, things of that nature. And while it certainly wasn't ideal, it was fun. It was enjoyable. I got to train outside. I got to train kind of right outside of where I was working. Thankfully I'm able to work remotely like quite easily. So, that aspect of it was quite nice. And then all the family time, of course. So, I'm certainly not complaining about my time there. It was incredible. And actually, there's a few other kind of developments that came out of that. In terms of other activity, we did a ton of hiking, and so that was great to kind of stay lean. I almost got too lean on accident because I just wasn't training as heavy. I was getting a lot of activity, and I was very busy at work, and kind of those kind of worked in concert to lean me down unintentionally. And the other thing that I would note is actually towards the end of the time that I was out there, they actually opened up gyms in Arizona. Now, this wasn't even close to happening in Illinois. Basically, there was this Metroflex gym in Scottsdale that I wanted to go to. It opened up like at midnight the day that gyms could open up. Those are some of the most euphoric workouts I've ever had in my life. I was just so excited to be there, so excited to train, in a real gym, in a great environment. Like it was hot in there, like they didn't have any AC. And all the equipment was like just so old school, and like it was just a great environment to train in. So after about a week of these absolutely euphoric workouts, we had to head back to Chicago. Unfortunately, gyms were still closed in Chicago at the time, so we were kind of going backward from a COVID lockdown perspective. But luckily for me, my best friend's parents, they let me go to their garage and train for a few weeks when I first got back, which was awesome. Is it Metroflex? No, but it sure is a hell of a lot better than training with bricks. And I loved it. The opportunity to train there was awesome. And really I felt like, okay, now I'm starting to kind of get back on track. And actually, before I even left Arizona, I had made a pretty substantial order at Rogue and Titan Fitness as well. I was trying to cobble together my own home setup, and finding plates was obviously challenging. So, the whole thing, as you might imagine, kind of in the environment where demand was so high, was pretty challenging. But I had a bunch of stuff on order and kind of fingers crossed it was going to get there soon. And by July, quite a bit of it had shown up. I had a half rack, I had an adjustable bench, I had a dip bar. My parents already had, dumbbells up to 50. I was able to get these awesome old school York plates that are like milled. They're so cool. A Cerakote barbell. I got basically everything that I would need. My parents' house, go to the basement, start working at some point during the day, walk 15 feet over to where all of the gym equipment is, get a workout in, go back to work. Maybe after work, if I have time, go to the golf course and kind of hang out there, hit some balls, like sneak onto the course for a little while, and then come back home and eat dinner. And, it was awesome. It was awesome. Maybe I'd have to come back to work because work was pretty busy, but, regardless, it was kind of an awesome situation. And that is when the minimalist training started to become like a real thing. I really started to take it seriously. Because I had been training kind of focused on a single body part or a single compound movement for a while. Every time I would, push towards these, big PR goals that I had, I felt like I'd hit a wall so quickly. And I just as an experiment, I was like, okay, so if I can optimize my recovery, maybe I can keep my intensity higher. And the simplest way that I thought to do that was to simply lower volume, and basically lower volume to the point that you couldn't lower it anymore. Basically doing like a single 3 to 5 rep max at the beginning of each workout, and then followed up with a few back off sets. And that's pretty much it. And I was skeptical for a while. I was maintaining muscle. My physique still looked good, but I didn't really have anything to show for it. And I was thinking about my pull-up strength, and it was progressing pretty nicely, but I was like, what number do I think that I can hit with this? And I was like, okay, it's going to be over 180 pounds. And at this point in time, I'm like 220 pounds or so. So like, that's a lot of weight to be lifting off the ground. I was a little bit hesitant about it, but I was like, okay, give me a couple weeks, I can get there. And sure enough, I made a video about this over the summer. I was able to hit 182 and a half pounds for 3 reps. And honestly, like, I went up to 185 after that and was able to hit that too. I feel like with weighted pull-ups, it gets to a point where like your elbows can only handle so much. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm happy. And not only am I happy with this particular lift, I think that I've actually, kind of figured something out here with this style of training. So yeah, at a certain point, gyms started to open up in Chicago, and my wife said, look, it's time to go to our own place. All the gyms are open. So, things are starting to resemble normalcy a little bit, which is great. And the other very nice benefit is a lot of people were kind of cautious to go back, and the gym I go to, Lakeshore Sport and Fitness, was open right away. And so basically I had my own gym for a lot of kind of the second half of 2020. There were very few people there. And it was basically just a benefit to me. And so I'm training in a minimalist style. I have all this momentum from these basement sessions where I'm just excited about my training. I'm like, okay, maybe I really have something here. Going into 2020, I was like, hey, 225 seated overhead press, I'm going to hit this and I'm going to do it for reps. And, I was struggling to even get close at the beginning of the year. Was kind of stuck in the low 200s. And within a matter of weeks, I was hitting 225 for reps. And now I hit 225 for 5 like it's nothing. And I've gone up to 235 for 3 on a couple of occasions. So at that point, I was like, okay, this is the real deal. Like, I think that this actually could work for me. And so I really just had, kind of going into Q4 of 2020, I really just had this one goal that I really wanted to hit, and that was a 315 incline. It was kind of far off my head because at one point, I was like, look, a year ago, my max was like 275 for 3. Like, that's not very good. I'm not very strong in this movement. And I continued to build it up. Like, at that point, it was a bit stronger. I was up into kind of the 290s. But still getting to 315, and I just wanted to hit a single rep, that was something that was kind of daunting. I'd failed it once before, and I was like still kind of scared about that. And so I hit 295 for 3. I went up to 300 for 3 and hit it like easily. And I was like, okay, this might actually be possible. And within a couple weeks, I hit 315 for 1. And I hit it so cleanly that the next week I went in and hit it for 2. And I still think on that second time that I had another rep in the tank. So like at that point, that is when this really kind of solidified minimalist training for me, where I was like, wow, like I'm progressing strength faster than I even thought I could. And at which point, that's when I released the update to my Evolution program. So, that's a free update that has been released. Everyone that picked up the Evolution program previously got that as a free update. And I never want to say never, but I'm not sure that I'll ever release another new program, because I like the idea that this Evolution program is my manifesto on advanced training nutrition. As my approach to each of those evolves, I will keep the program updated. Like, this will be a living document that I will update with all of my findings and newest programs. And that's the same thing with the minimalist program. So that is a free update. And with all my programs, you get direct access to me for any questions via email. And so that's pretty nice. But regardless, the idea here is throughout 2020, I basically learned, minimalist training can actually work. And if structured properly, you can make pretty incredible gains. And so I crushed my strength goals. At the beginning of the year, I made a video and I said, it feels good to be able to honestly say this is the biggest and strongest I've ever been. And sitting here now at the beginning of 2021, I can say the same thing. This is the biggest and strongest I've ever been. And, being able to say that honestly, like multiple years in a row is like pretty exciting. And what I tell people that I work with, like online coaching clients, is, your own progress is always the most motivating thing. And, this is a perfect example of why that's true. When you can make progress, and it works, it justifies all the intensity, all the hard work, all the consistency. all of that stuff just kind of falls into place when you know, like you can see it in yourself working. Going into this year, I'm excited to kind of continue to push this minimalist training, see how far I can push it, and kind of document it on YouTube. To the extent you have any questions or any kind of videos or topics that you'd like me to cover, feel free to leave those in the comments below. But regardless, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I'll talk to you soon.